Chapter 21 In one breath, everything is gone. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Luo Li and Jun Mo Xiao have been practicing together since they were young, and they have an extremely good understanding of each other in terms of combat cooperation. The two of them performed the 9 transformations of the divine dragon. It is erratic and unpredictable in the sky. Wisps of sword light continue to shoot out from all directions, and for a moment he was evenly matched with the supreme elder of the Izumo sword sect. The supreme elder was also very aggrieved. He didn't expect that his majestic 9th-level cultivator of the god-shaping realm would be unable to take care of these two little guys who didn't even have full hair. The disciples from the Izumo sword sect nearby were watching this scene from a distance and couldn't help but feel frightened. The young man and woman were much higher in cultivation than them, but they were much younger than them. The injured elders of the god-shaping realm were now crawling around, leaning against the wall, watching this earth-shattering battle. Especially Li Qingshan couldn't help but sigh when he saw this scene. Presumably, the Izumo sword sect will not be able to escape disaster today. These two teenage guys are really awesome. If the supreme elder couldn't defeat them, I'm afraid none of these old guys would survive today. Bang bang. The sword light exploded continuously. The supreme elder used all his strength to attack Luo Li and Jun Mo Xiao. Although the sword energy was everywhere, a small amount of sword energy fell on the two people. However, the imperial robes worn by the two people exerted amazing defensive power at this moment, leaving the two people unscathed. Haha. Lord Grimm laughed loudly and his sword became sharper. This royal robe is so powerful, its defense power is astonishing. The Supreme Elder's attack landed on the imperial robe and was unable to pierce it. This makes Lord Grimm feel less scrupulous about fighting. The same goes for Luo Li on the other side. The two men soared intense sword into the sky, and sword rays stabbed at the Supreme Elder. The Supreme Elder was beaten by two little children and was in danger. He roared continuously, stabbed his sword, turned around and fled through the air. Still want to escape? Lord Grimm sneered, immediately used the 9 transformations of the Divine Dragon Sect, and chased after him closely. Although the Supreme Elder is very fast, but the 9 transformations of the Divine Dragon of the Shenlong Sect were also extremely fast, and they were able to closely follow the Supreme Elder. Luo Li, on the other hand, was slower and followed Lord Grimm closely. This Supreme Elder, it's a secret about the mastermind behind the scenes, so naturally he can't be allowed to escape. In an instant, all 3 people disappeared into the horizon. Yi Yun remained motionless in the carriage. He narrowed his eyelids slightly and looked at the scene in the void, with an unusually calm expression on his face. At this moment, Li Qingshan stood up unsteadily. He sighed to the other elders in the god-shaping realm and said, "Elders, the Izumo sword sect is in great trouble today. Please pack up quickly, leave here, and run for your lives." The other elders were helped up by the disciples. All of them looked pale, and they were obviously seriously injured. "Master, those 2 young men are so powerful. I don't know if there are more powerful elders behind them. It seems that our Izumo sword sect is indeed in big trouble this time." An elder of the god-shaping realm coughed twice, blood spilled from the corner of his mouth, and said with a sad smile on his face. Another elder next to him also said in a trembling voice, "In this case, let's go down the mountain quickly to avoid the limelight for a while and avoid this disaster." The other elders all said yes. Next, other disciples followed and walked outside. At this time, one of the god-shaping realm elders looked at the black carriage, with an angry look on his face, and shouted to the disciples behind him, "Everyone, don't leave in a hurry, destroy this carriage first." "Good." A disciple immediately responded, raised his sword and slashed at the black carriage. Bang sound, his sword was bounced back, and there was no trace of the black carriage. "This carriage is so strong, is it also a magic weapon?" The Yuanhai Realm disciple frowned, and once again used all his strength to stab it with a sword energy. Just listen to the sound of boom. The sword energy was shattered, but the carriage remained motionless. It's really a treasure. An elder from the god-shaping realm laughed loudly, with a greedy look in his eyes. Li Qingshan said from the side, "While they are gone, hurry up and get this carriage down the mountain together." "Okay." Countless disciples swarmed forward. Someone held the reins of the black horse, and someone pushed the carriage from behind. No one expected that the dark horse in front suddenly raised his leg and kicked a disciple away. He hit the wall and vomited blood and died. "Wow, this horse is so powerful, that everyone was surprised. The disciple who was injured was at the 10th level of the Xiandan realm. Everyone, be careful. Li Qingshan shouted loudly, there was also a hint of fanaticism in his eyes. This carriage should also be a great treasure, including this dark horse. It seems to have an extraordinary origin. Now, although the Supreme Elder is no match for those two young men, but it should hold up for a long time. Before going down the mountain, it would be an unexpected bonus if we could take this black carriage with us. When those two teenagers come back, where will they be found? Li Qingshan was not seriously injured. He held his sword and walked towards the black horse with a murderous look on his face. Since this dark horse won't cooperate, let's knock it out first. I don't believe that he, a great monk in the realm of shaping gods, can't deal with a dark horse. You people are so incompetent. In the carriage, a gentle voice suddenly sounded, is there anyone in the carriage? Li Qingshan and others couldn't help but be shocked. He has obviously used his spiritual consciousness to detect that there is nothing inside. When did there be another person? The door curtain inside the car opened and a young man in white came out. This young man in white clothes has a face like a crown jade, three-dimensional facial features, eyes as deep as stars, and exudes a demeanor like an immortal. Once you see it, you will have an indelible impression. It seems that the young man in front of him is a godlike figure who came out of the scroll, and is not immortal at all. He took a closer look at the young man's cultivation and found that he couldn't see through it at all. He seemed to be just an ordinary person. Li Qingshan felt a little scared in his heart. He calmed down, looked at the young man in white clothes in front of him, and said in a trembling voice, are you the elder of those two young men? Good. Yi Yun nodded lightly, glanced at the greedy guys like Izumo Sword Sect, and smiled calmly. You, the Izumo Sword Sect, are all idiots. I said, how can you slander my Izumo Sword Sect like this? After all, our Izumo Sword Sect is also one of the top 10 forces of the Gyue dynasty. You have to carefully consider the weight of your words. An elder from the God-shaping realm roared next to him. What qualifications do a bunch of ants have to negotiate terms with me here? Yi Yun smiled softly, flicked his fingers, and released a wisp of fresh air. This wisp of fresh air, initially very small, suddenly became extremely large, turning into a gust of wind, sweeping towards the surrounding areas. I saw countless Izumo Sword Sect disciples all around, turning into ashes as soon as they encountered this breeze. The first one to turn into ashes was naturally the nearest Li Qingshan. He watched in horror as his body quickly turned into ashes. The elders who were in the God-shaping realm behind them also turned into fly ashes. Some disciples with lower cultivation levels farther away were so frightened when they saw this scene, they all wanted to escape immediately, but it was too late. Chapter 22 The Terror of the True God. You are listening at novelfull.audio. With a burst of clear energy, the entire Izumo Sword Sect fell. Even all the buildings of the Izumo Sword Sect turned into dust at this moment. This is the terror of the true God. Even the most powerful Eternal Realm cultivator on Sangnan continent could not hold on for a few seconds before disappearing under this blast of pure energy. Under the true God, all living beings are like ants. Why bother? Yi Yun smiled lightly, feeling a little helpless at the price paid by these greedy people, but this is human nature. Money attracts people's hearts. Once they encounter treasures, it is difficult for people to control their inner greed. No matter what level of monk you are, you can't escape the word greed. Even if it reaches the highest realm of Godman, the same is true. Pony, let's go and see how the battle is going ahead. Yi Yun entered the carriage and ordered. Okay, sir. The black horse was shocked, raised its hooves, and ran quickly. Just a few steps, the black horse's hooves suddenly left the ground. It stepped on the void, pulled the black carriage, drew a black line in mid-air, and disappeared instantly. The supreme elder of the Izumo Sword Sect fled as fast as he could, but found, the sharp-edged young man was still following him, chasing after him so hard that it was difficult to get rid of him, which made him anxious. Today's battle changed so quickly that he really didn't expect it. The fighting power of the two young men was unexpectedly strong. The emperor-level robes they wore had even more powerful defensive capabilities. His attacks at the 9th level of the God-shaping realm were unable to break through the robe's defense. As an elder of the Izumo Sword Sect, he is extremely noble in the Guyu dynasty, and the robe he wears is only of heaven level. King-level robes are extremely rare in the entire Guyu dynasty, let alone emperor-level ones. If he could defeat these two young men with his strength, the Supreme Elder would definitely grab these two imperial robes. Unfortunately, he can't do it now. Fortunately, his cultivation level is higher than these two people, and his magic power is also strong, so he can last longer. After 2 hours, the Supreme Elder took a slight breath, and when he looked back, his eyes were so wide that they almost bulged out. The boy still kept the same distance from him, without any change. How can this young man's aura be so powerful? That the Supreme Elder was shocked, narrowed his eyes and looked further away. In the far distance, there was a small yellow dot that was approaching rapidly. Taking a closer look, it was the beautiful girl. It is unimaginable that this beautiful girl has such strong endurance. What bad luck! That the Supreme Elder's face was gloomy. He did not dare to stay and continued to flee quickly. Behind him, Lord Grimm kept a cold face and pursued him without missing a step. He absorbed 2 drops of the blood of the ancestral dragon. His body is extremely strong and his energy is long-lasting, far exceeding that of his fellow monks, so he can track the Supreme Elder for a long time. Luo Li was a little weaker, but still pursued closely, without showing any sign of fatigue. Call. The sky turned dark, a black shadow passed overhead and landed in front, blocking the way. The Supreme Elder, who was running for his life, suddenly stopped. Why is that black carriage? That the Supreme Elder was shocked and his pupils shrank sharply. This carriage was once parked in the Izumo Kensong Square, and it should have been the ride of the 2 teenagers, but he didn't expect that this carriage could actually fly in the air. It seems that the black horse must be an incredible mythical beast. Don't run away, you can't escape. A man's voice came from the black carriage. There is someone there. The Supreme Elder was shocked. He had also detected this black carriage, but it was empty at the time. Now, when will another person come out? An old face, now extremely pale. The Supreme Elder suddenly thought of a possibility. In this black carriage, there has always been a peerless strong man, but because his level is too low, he cannot feel him at all. Thinking of this, the Supreme Elder felt extremely frightened, and his desire to survive made him immediately turn around and flee in another direction. At this moment, the surrounding space suddenly changed strangely. Boom! The Supreme Elder hit an invisible barrier and was bounced back. It's over. A barrier has been set up here by this peerless strong man. I can't get out. That the Supreme Elder was frightened in his heart. He was floating in the void, his head lowered, his face constantly changing from green to red, as if he was making a difficult decision. Kid. Yi Yun looked at this person and said softly, give you a chance to live, tell me. Who is it that asked you to go to Wanbao Pavilion to issue a mission? Let you deal with the little Shenlong Sect. That the Supreme Elder gritted his teeth and remained silent. Even when faced with the oppression of a supremely powerful man, he still showed no sign of relenting. At this moment, Lord Grimm rushed over. When he saw the Supreme Elder, he sneered. Run, let's see where you go. As he spoke, he stabbed him with his sword. The Supreme Elder smiled miserably, looked at Lord Grimm, and suddenly laughed loudly. I won't tell you even to the death, so just give up on this idea. Suddenly, the aura on his body suddenly became extremely strong. Is this going to self-destruct? Lord Grimm suddenly felt that something was wrong in his heart, and immediately used the Divine Dragon's 9 transformations technique, drew his sword back, and quickly retreated towards the rear. Boom! The Supreme Elder's body suddenly exploded. A powerful shock wave spread out in all directions, until he encountered the invisible barrier and was blocked. Fortunately, Jun Mo Xiao reacted quickly enough. The 9 transformations of the Divine Dragon were extremely mysterious, and he was protected by an imperial robe, so he was not harmed. When Luo Li rushed over from a distance, she happened to miss the self-destruction. She came to Lord Grimm and sighed. I didn't expect that this old guy would self-destruct. He is really a tough guy. Yes, senior sister, the clue is now broken. Lord Grimm said angrily. Luo Li bit her red lips, her face gloomy, and she didn't say a word. Suddenly, she looked at the black carriage parked in the void and her eyes widened. Junior brother, look, why is our ancestor's carriage parked in the void? Sure, it's true that the ancestor is here. He stuttered. Lord Grimm had previously focused on the Supreme Elder, but now he saw the black carriage, with a look of shock on his face. Right now, Yi Yun walked out of the car and appeared at the place where the Supreme Elder blew himself up. Lord Grimm quickly flew up with Luoli. Ancestor, the clue is broken. Lord Grimm scratched his head, looking regretful. Yi Yun shook his head and said nonchalantly, "It doesn't matter." Seeing Yi Yun's indifferent expression, Lord Grimm's eyes lit up. "Ancestor, do you have other ways to find clues?" Luoli, who was next to him, recalled the methods used by his ancestors when facing those people from Qingjian sect in the past, and he immediately reacted. She knocked Lord Grimm on the forehead with her hand and giggled. "Who is our ancestor? He is a true god. Can such a small thing stump our ancestor?" Senior sister is right." Lord Grimm scratched his head and smiled sheepishly. Right now, Yi Yun pressed his hand, and a soul slowly appeared in the void. It was the Supreme Elder. Then the light on his fingertips continued to flash, as if he was controlling the soul. Lord Grimm stared at this scene nervously, while Luoli looked relaxed. It took a few breaths. Yi Yun nodded again. The soul of this Supreme Elder immediately dissipated between heaven and earth. "Ancestor, who is behind this?" Luoli asked softly, her eyes full of hope. Chapter 23: The Old Sword Master and the Mastermind Behind the Scenes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sword God Sect, is there a person named Old Sword Master? Yi Yun looked at Luoli and said with a slight smile. Old Sword Master. Luoli was slightly startled. She thought for a moment, then a look of shock suddenly appeared on her face. She nodded repeatedly and explained, "Ancestor, there is indeed such a person. But, this Old Sword Master has been living in seclusion for hundreds of years. Today's Sword God Sect, there's a new Sword Master taking care of everything." Yi Yun continued to ask, "What kind of force is this Sword God Sect?" Luoli quickly replied, "Old Ancestor, the Sword God Sect is the #1 sect among the 10 forces of the Guyu dynasty. 100 years ago, it was controlled by the old sword Saint Shimen Chueshue. This Shimen Chueshue was astonishingly talented, a peerless monster, and was known as the most invincible swordsman of the Guyu dynasty. Within hundreds of years, no one would be his opponent. However, 100 years ago, the old sword master washed his hands in a golden basin and retired to the mountains and forests. It is said that he was in retreat preparing to attack the Yuanhai Realm." "I see." Yi Yun nodded lightly, not taking it seriously. The mastermind behind the persecution of the Shenlong Sect was so secretive, linking every link, and making it watertight. It can be seen from this Supreme Elder. This old sword master should also be a puppet on strings, and there should be a larger force behind it controlling all of this. Yi Yun was very curious. Who is he? When dealing with a small Shenlong Sect, he had such sinister intentions that he had been hunting for nearly 50 generations. Who did the sect master of the 250th generation offend? To make this person hate the Shenlong Sect so much, he was tortured generation after generation. Not only did he not give him any pleasure, but he also used this cat and mouse game to constantly torture the Shenlong Sect. Are you preparing to be tortured thoroughly to the 300 generations to complete an integer of 50? This perverted mentality really made Yi Yun feel sick. Wait for him to peel off the cocoon and find out the man behind the scenes. Yi Yun must seal this man away forever and make him suffer millions of tortures for the rest of his life. Today's clues, pointing to the largest force in the Guyu dynasty, the old sword master of the Sword God Sect. This shows that in the Guyu dynasty, the highest commander is this old sword master. According to Luoli, this invincible old swordsman has always been the #1 master of the Guyu dynasty. 100 years ago, he was already a half-step master in the Yuanhai Realm. Now that 100 years of seclusion has passed, although there has been no movement, I am afraid that there is only a thin line between the Yuanhai Realm. At the moment, Luoli and Jun Mo Xiao are only at the Shaping God Realm. If they were to fight against a half-step Divine Bridge Realm or a strong person at the Divine Bridge Realm, they currently have no chance of winning. The two of them need a long period of experience. Think of this. Yi Yun had a preliminary idea in his mind. Find the person behind the scenes. Don't rush. The most important thing is to train Luoli and Jun Mo Xiao to become the two peerless combat powers of the Shenlong Sect in the future. Sooner or later, he will leave Cangnan continent, so Yi Yun must train these two successors of the Shenlong Sect. Yi Yun looked at Luoli and smiled softly, and said, "We don't have to rush to the Sword God Sect. Let's travel around first and help you improve your cultivation. With that said, Yi Yun took out 2 more vials from his arms, passed it to 2 people. Ancestor, what is here? Luo Li curiously put the vial to her nose and smelled it, feeling an indescribable breath coming over her, making her body extremely comfortable. This is Dragon Tiger Pill. Yi Yun smiled and said, now that you have reached the realm of shaping the gods, you can take this Dragon Tiger Pill to improve your cultivation. Lord Grimm and Luo Li looked at each other, both a little confused. They have never heard of this Dragon Tiger Pill, but, since it was something brought out by our ancestors, it must be extraordinary. The 2 people opened the vial in unison and took a look inside to feel the scent of the elixir. Ancestor, is this also a god-level quality? Lord Grimm asked in a trembling voice. Yi Yun smiled and nodded. Lord Grimm and Luo Li suddenly felt like they were in a dream. The 2 people hurriedly released their consciousness and looked into the vial. I was suddenly surprised to find that this small bottle actually contained tens of thousands of dragon and tiger pills. Oh my god, there are so many god-level elixirs. Ancestor, you are so kind to us. Luo Li pressed the vial to her chest, feeling surprised, happy and intoxicated. Ha ha ha. Yi Yun laughed loudly, gently tapped the 2 little guys in front of him with his hand, and said with a smile, you 2 are the only 2 remaining disciples of the Shenlong Sect. If you don't cultivate them well, how can I be embarrassed to face those who died? The leader of the Shenlong Sect. These words made Luo Li and Jun Mo laugh, and their faces turned red. This Dragon Tiger Pill is so powerful that you can only take 1 pill a month. Yi Yun thought for a while and whispered, after all, Luo Li and Jun Mo Xiao's bodies are not strong enough to withstand the overbearing effects of this god-level dragon and tiger pill. As for this trip to the Izumo Sword Sect, regarding the performance of Luo Li and Lord Grimm, Yi Yun gave him a barely passing grade. These 2 guys are inexperienced in fighting and are too simple-minded and not ruthless enough. Yi Yun thought for a while and had an idea in his mind. Anyway, there is still a long way to go from the Sword God Sect. There are still 8 of the 10 sects, and there are some quasi-first-class forces. Why not challenge them one by one and give these 2 little guys a good workout? I have an idea in mind. Yi Yun smiled and patted the 2 people on the shoulders twice. Okay, let's go now. Yi Yun entered the black carriage and gave instructions, and then the carriage landed on the ground again. Lord Grimm and Luo Li quickly agreed and sat near the front of the car. Herod, the black horse roared, hooves flying, and drove out along the rugged mountain road. Ancestor, what's going on with the Izumo Sword Sect? Just when Lord Grimm was driving, Luo Li suddenly felt something in her heart and asked. Those ants are actually greedy for this carriage. Yi Yun smiled softly and did not continue. Those people deserve to die. Lord Grimm said angrily. Luo Li's dark eyes rolled, and a look of surprise appeared on her beautiful little face. She patted Lord Grimm's shoulder with her hand and chuckled. Is there any need to say that? They must be gone. Lord Grimm understood immediately and laughed. The black carriage kept moving forward, and after driving out of the mountainous area, it entered the plains. 100 miles away, there was a tall city, Yi Yun thought, and the black carriage stopped moving. Ancestor, Lord Grimm was a little surprised and turned back to look in the direction of the carriage. The walking black horse suddenly stopped. It must have been the order given by the ancestors to do this, otherwise, if he wanted to stop this dark horse, it would be impossible to do so. Yi Yun walked out of the car. He gently touched Jun Mo Xiao and Luo Li with his hand, and their cultivation levels immediately dropped from the God-shaping realm to the Yuanhai Realm. Lord Grimm has become the 4th level of Yuanhai Realm. Luo Li has reached the 1st level of Yuanhai Realm. Feeling that their cultivation levels had plummeted, the 2 of them couldn't help but turn pale with shock. Chapter 24 Seal, Downgrade, Set the Tone. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ancestor. Luo Li's little face was filled with shock. She didn't know why her ancestor would be so cruel to them. His cultivation has dropped to a whole level. The plastic god realm reaches directly to the Yuanhai realm. Yi Yun didn't say anything, but tapped his finger lightly. The grades of the 2 imperial level robes quickly dropped to the earth level. Next, the level of the 2 divine swords in the hands of the 2 people also dropped significantly to the earth level. Everything is going down. Luo Li and Jun Mo Xiao looked at each other, with a sense of soul-crushing panic. Ancestor, what are you doing? Lord Grim wiped away his tears and said with a cry. I want you to become stronger. Yi Yun put his hands behind his back, with a faint smile on his face. Seeing the two people puzzled, Yi Yun said softly, a true swordsmanship genius does not rely on external objects. And you, there are too many places where you rely on external objects at present. If you want to become a peerless swordsman in Sangnan continent, remember one thing, you must practice as much as possible. My own sword heart. The heart of the sword, the more it is constantly tempered without the help of external objects, the more transparent it will become, and it will become more and more powerful. When that time comes, there's nothing that can't be cut with one sword. After hearing what their ancestor said, Lord Grim and Luoli looked at each other and blinked as hard as they could. The practice of this sword heart refreshed their long-standing knowledge. Yi Yun smiled slightly. It seemed that these two children, who had never seen much of the world, had to be given more time to digest what he said. The reason why Yi Yun did this was also the result of his careful consideration along the way. The old sword master who was invincible 100 years ago must have extraordinary attainments in the art of swordsmanship. Sword cultivation, once it reaches a certain level, the combat power will be horribly high. Another important thing is that the old sword master's sword heart has long been extremely clear and untainted by dust. Such a person, even if he doesn't have a magic weapon, just pick up a wooden stick and you can perform supreme sword skills. Of course, this statement does not exclude weapons. If there are magic weapons, especially those above the king level, they will naturally be even more powerful. Yi Yun guessed, the old sword master was considered a swordsman. He had been immersed in the art of swordsmanship for many years. He must have an almost invincible and transparent sword heart. Even if Luo Li and Jun Mo Xiao had magic weapons and sharp blades to help them, they would still not be able to match the old sword master. In order to allow the two of them to grow quickly, Yi Yun sealed their cultivation. He also sealed the imperial robe and divine sword. This kills the two of them, let them concentrate more on the practice of swordsmanship, without distractions, and hone their clear sword hearts. Lowering their cultivation level also puts more pressure on them. The breakthroughs achieved under this huge pressure are faster than those achieved under normal cultivation conditions in the God-shaping realm. In order to defeat the old sword master of the Sword God sect, Yi Yun arranged a dangerous road in Huashan for Jun Mo Xiao and Luo Li. Once this dangerous road is cleared, the future benefits for these two children will be huge. They will become the strongest swordsmen in Sangnan continent. The light shines brightly. This method of suppressing cultivation was also used by his master on Yi Yun back then. It's exactly the same as Yi Yun's method now. Therefore, after Yi Yun later cultivated to the top eternity realm in Sangnan continent, no one at the same level could be his opponent. Even 10 powerful men in the eternal realm are no match for him. After coming out of the sign in space, Yi Yun obtained an unimaginable amount of resources, so his initial idea was to use resources to pile up Lord Grim and Luo Li. However, the appearance of the old sword master of the Sword God sect suddenly made Yi Yun realize that there was a misunderstanding in this idea. Resources should still be used, however, some restrictions must be given to the two children so that they can move forward under pressure and achieve greater achievements in the future. Strive to reach your own glorious state one day. Have you two figured it out? That it took a stick of incense. Yi Yun saw the two people's expressions slowly regaining their composure, and then smiled softly. Ancestor, I seem to have figured it out. Luo Li was the first to speak. How about you? Yi Yun looked at Lord Grim again. Lord Grim blushed and nodded quickly. That's good. Yi Yun shrugged and chuckled. Next, we will challenge the talented disciples of each major sect along the way, so that you can experience the pleasure of breakthrough under pressure. Okay, ancestor. Luo Li became excited and her face turned red. Challenging the geniuses of all the major forces was something she had never thought of before. Thinking about it, she felt extremely excited. In the eyes of Luo Li, these talented disciples of great forces were all superior beings, but now, she can defeat these talented disciples. For a girl like Luo Li, there is no sense of achievement at all in challenging a strong man in the God-shaping realm. After all, those powerful men in the God-shaping realm are all elders of the sect and are very old. But it was different for the Tianjiao disciples who challenged Yuanhai Realm. These Tianjiao disciples were not much older than them, and were even similar in age. Look at Luo Li's excited look. Yi Yun's heart moved. He patted her shoulder lightly. and said with a smile, Luoli, as the leader of the Shenlong Sect now, have you ever thought about the future development of the Shenlong Sect? Luoli was speechless for a moment. When she joined the Shenlong Sect when she was young, there are only 4 people in Shenlong Sect. As the new leader of the Shenlong Sect, she really has not thought about how the Shenlong Sect will develop. Lord Grimm, do you have any ideas? Yi Yun turned his attention to Lord Grimm, who was blushing next to him. Ancestor. Lord Grimm stuttered and said, could it be that you want us to start recruiting disciples now? Yi Yun shook his head, then he paused, giving the 2 men a few minutes to think. It took a stick of incense. I met 2 people, but still no answer was given. Yi Yun was not discouraged. After all, these 2 children were too young and had not experienced much. Yi Yun smiled, looked at the 2 of them, and said earnestly, the development of any sect is inseparable from practice resources. If you start to accumulate practice resources now, one day the Shenlong Sect will open its gates and recruit disciples. Then you don't have to worry. Luo Li's eyes suddenly lit up. She chuckled, clapped her hands and said, Ancestor, do you mean, that when we challenge the major sects, we should start snatching resources from the major sects? Yi Yun just smiled and did not speak. Is this okay? Lord Grimm next to him looked shocked. He looked helpless and said, Senior sister, as descendants of our majestic Shenlong Sect, do we still want to steal other people's resources? Snort. Luoli put her little hands on her hips and said with a fierce voice, why not grab it? The cultivation world is always about the jungle. If our Shenlong Sect wants to grow and develop in the future, we will naturally need resources. And our ancestors cannot protect us for the rest of their lives. We senior sisters and brothers, sooner or later we will face a strong storm, so we must start preparing now. After hearing what Luoli said, Lord Grimm blinked and seemed to understand. Luoli waved her fist, and then said fiercely, little junior brother, our ancestor has reached the realm of true gods, and maybe he will leave Changnan continent at some time. At that time, everything will have to depend on our senior sisters and brothers. So while we are here, while our ancestors are still around, we will search for as many resources as possible. Hearing Luoli speak clearly, Yi Yun showed admiration on his face. Back then, when he was practicing in the Shenlong Sect, he also robbed countless sects of their resources. This is the foundation for the Shenlong Sect to be promoted to the Eternal Sect in the future. Now all this falls on this pair of senior sisters and brothers. Chapter 25 Yi Yun, the bully from 100,000 years ago. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Senior sister, I finally understand what you mean. Lord Grimm suddenly became excited. He clenched his fists vigorously and said with a loud smile, Senior sister, from now on we will burn, kill, loot and commit all kinds of evil, right? Luoli glared at him angrily. Junior brother, is this how you misinterpret my meaning? No. Lord Grimm scratched his head and smiled sheepishly. At this time, Yi Yun showed a hint of admiration towards Lord Grimm. He looked at Luoli and said with a smile, what Jun Mo Xiao said is not wrong. In the world of cultivation, the jungle is the law of the jungle. If you don't rob him, he will rob you. If you rob him, he will definitely seek revenge on you. If you don't kill him, he will definitely kill you. Luoli recalled what happened to Yuanhai Ridge and couldn't help but nod her head. The ancestors were right. This world is so cruel and realistic. The Shenlong Sect was so weak at the beginning, but it was still bullied by some powerful people. Now, everything has changed. Their senior siblings are going to bully others. Go and harvest elixir resources, harvest magic weapons, harvest heavenly materials and earthly treasures, loot them all. Seeing Luo Li's demeanor changing constantly, her eyes bright and her aura strong, Yi Yun smiled softly, turned his palm over and took out 2 rings. They were handed to Lord Grimm and Luo Li respectively. He whispered, this is a god-level storage ring. It has been concealed by me. The space inside is huge. I hope that you will use the resources you plunder to fill it up. How big is it? Luo Li was very curious, so she quickly put on the storage ring, released her spiritual consciousness and put it in. She immediately discovered a vast space, boundless and seemingly endless. Oh my God, ancestors, this place is too big. If the ring space is filled up, how many years and months will it take us? Luo Li stuck out her tongue, looked shocked, but laughed out loud. Yes, ancestor. Lord Grimm also had a wry smile on his face. Yi Yun laughed and said, the road of cultivation will never end, so just search hard. In the future, our Shenlong Sect will not only stand on the Cangnan continent, but also take root in other places. Luo Li was shocked. She asked in shock, ancestor, do you think there are other continents? Lord Grimm also looked at Yi Yun with a puzzled look, because in his heart, the only place in this world is Cangnan continent, and Cangnan continent is also extremely vast and boundless, and it is difficult to explore to the end in this lifetime. Yes, Cangnan continent is just an island. Outside this island, there is a continent larger than this, and there are more powerful people there. Yi Yun put his hands behind his hands and looked into the distance into the void. At this moment, his gaze seemed to penetrate through eternity, penetrate the entire Cangnan continent, and see the glorious scene across the sea. Wow, that's really incredible. Luo Li was so excited that she clapped her hands and shouted. The ancestors' words immediately ignited a ray of faith in her heart. The Shenlong Sect will not only develop into the top eternal sect in Cangnan continent, but will also spread its branches in other continents in the future. This gave her a powerful motivation. Okay, don't think so much now, just stay in this small Guyu dynasty to practice, wait until one day, you break through to the eternal realm, and then consider going to the outside world. Yi Yun stretched out his hand and tapped the two people on the head, then withdrew his hand with a gentle smile on his face. 100,000 years ago, after he reached the eternal realm in the Shenlong Sect, he once flew out of the huge island of Cangnan continent. But the other side of the island is full of unimaginable risks. He simply cannot cross that risk and reach another unimaginable continent. According to Yi Yun's guess, only after reaching the true God realm can one break through the forbidden land of the sea and enter the continent. Therefore, after supporting Luo Li and Jun Mo Xiao to a certain extent, he was ready to leave this place and go to the other side of the sea to have a look. Ancestor. Luo Li touched her little head and said with a smile, which force should we challenge at our first stop? Yi Yun shook his head, looked at the city in front of him, and said with a smile, don't be too anxious. There is a city just in front of you. I'm hungry. Let's go there to eat something first. Okay, ancestor. Luo Li stuck out her pink tongue. The ancestors have already reached the realm of true gods, and they still like to eat the delicacies of the human world. In fact, a monk like her who is in the realm of shaping gods will have no problem if she doesn't eat or drink for a year. Luo Li has no interest in ordinary food in the world now. After Yi Yun returned to the carriage, Lord Grimm pulled up the reins, and the black carriage continued on the road. After a while, it drove into the city. This city is called Guyun City. The black carriage drove into the busy street and stopped in front of a wine shop. Luo Li and Jun Mo Xiao jumped off the front of the car and respectfully invited Yi Yun out of the carriage. After the three of them entered the wine shop, they found that it was overcrowded and business was booming. 3 guests, we are all full now, please wait a moment. A young boy came over with a smile, nodded and bowed. Isn't there a private room? Luo Li's face darkened and she frowned. What a precious person her ancestors were. How could they dine in such a noisy place? There is only one private room, but it has been booked in advance. Please wait patiently for a while. The boy laughed. Since the guest has not arrived, this private room belongs to us. If that person comes to find you, just ask him to come to me. Luo Li pushed the young man away with a palm and strode towards the second floor. Seeing how arrogant his senior sister was, Lord Grimm couldn't help but stick out his tongue and show a naughty expression. Recalling what senior sister Luo Li said before, Lord Grimm could understand her performance, because, next day, about to become a bad guy, in the spiritual world, the law of the jungle is followed. In a small wine shop in the human city, as long as you have the strength, what does it mean to grab a private room? Especially to grab a private room for the ancestors of the true God realm. This is simply a supreme honor. Yi Yun smiled slightly when he saw this. He was very satisfied with Luo Li's rapid transformation. A strong person must behave like a strong person. No matter where you go, you must never suffer a loss and must show strength. If someone dares to provoke, there will be no need to show mercy and the opponent will be beaten until he or she is convinced. Back then, Yi Yun was also a famous bully in Sangnan continent. He even dared to tease the saint of the Ice Phoenix sect who was as famous as the Shenlong Sect. He even went to peek at the saint of the Ice Phoenix sect taking a bath and appeared in front of her openly. This shows how bold and arrogant he is. Chapter 26 Remembering the Saint of the Ice Phoenix Sect. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Recalling the saint of the Ice Phoenix Sect, Yi Yun showed a look of nostalgia on his face. That little girl, with her front and back bulging, and her beauty is so beautiful. It was extremely uncomfortable to have a cold, beautiful face all day long, as if he owed her money, so when Yi Yun had something to do, he would tease this saint. The relationship between the two eternal level sects is very tense, and they often fight over it. Fortunately, both sides exercised restraint and did not have a real decisive battle, allowing the two sects to preserve their strength. If these two eternal level giant sects were to fight in a decisive battle, the entire Changnan continent might not be able to withstand the impact of that kind of war. Arrived on the third floor, Luoli caught a waiter, asked for a free private room, and walked in first. She found that the environment in the room was elegant, and ran over to Yi Yun and smiled and said, "Ancestor, the environment of this private room is not bad, shall we dine here?" "Good." Yi Yun nodded, then he stepped in. Lord Grimm stood at the door, holding his sword in both hands and looking wary. Luoli entered the private room, stood beside Yi Yun, and said with a sweet smile, "Ancestor, I will order whatever you want to eat." Yi Yun smiled, "No need to go to so much trouble, just bring up all the signature dishes here." "Okay, Ancestor." Luoli immediately turned around and went out to arrange for the waiter to place the order. Yi Yun's gaze penetrated the wall, and he couldn't help but feel funny when he saw Lord Grimm at the door, who looked like he was facing a formidable enemy. "Lord Grimm, no need to stick it like a piece of wood, come in quickly." Yi Yun ordered. Lord Grimm looked firm and shook his head. "Ancestor, please finish your meal first. I'm afraid someone will come to grab the private room later." Seeing that Lord Grimm was so loyal, Yi Yun had no choice but to give up. For Yi Yun, who is in the true God realm, the reason why he wants to eat some human food is simply to remember those years on Earth. At this time, Luoli trotted in and stood next to Yi Yun. "Luoli, come over and sit down and have something to eat." "Ancestor, I am not hungry at all, and I really have no interest in worldly food." Luoli waved her hands repeatedly, her face slightly red. In fact, she had already taken a dragon tiger pill while on the road. This elixir is very powerful, and now it makes her whole body feel bloated and uncomfortable, so now she can't eat anything at all. "All right." Yi Yun naturally knew it well and smiled calmly without revealing anything. Soon, all kinds of Canadian and American dishes were served on the table. Yi Yun casually noticed that the waiter looked panicked, as if he had a deep fear of this elegant dining room. Yi Yun slowly enjoyed his human delicacies. It seems, the person who booked this private room has an unusual identity. This little guy is also afraid of the other party's identity. Yi Yun's heart suddenly moved, and his eyes fell on the cashier on the first floor. The old shopkeeper of the wine shop was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot. At this moment, several young men wearing blood-colored robes walked in from outside. These young men were extraordinary in martial arts, and each of them had a murderous aura about them, as if they were enveloped by a layer of blood. At first glance, he is not a kind person. "Shopkeeper, which floor is the private room on?" The young man in the lead had a face as white as jade and was about 17 or 18 years old. Although he was very young, he was already at the 6th level of Yuanhai Realm. The old shopkeeper's face suddenly turned ugly. He hurriedly stepped forward and said with a smile on his face, "Master Bai, you are here just in time. There are 3 unreasonable guests above who have occupied your private room." "What? Someone dares to occupy the private room?" Before the boy named Bai could speak, the boys behind him became angry one by one. "Interesting." Bai Yufeng's enchanting face exuded a cold light. He sneered and said, "Okay, in Guiyun City, someone actually dares to steal the private room reserved for me by the Shui sect. Senior brother Bai, let's go up and see who is so blind. We must break their legs." A young man with blood-red eyes and murderous intent. "Walk." Bai Yufeng snorted heavily and led a group of junior brothers up to the 3rd floor. "Man, where is our private room?" As soon as he went upstairs, Bai Yufeng grabbed the guy at the top of the stairs. when the boy saw these young men in blood-colored robes clearly, his face turned pale with fright, and he quickly pointed in a certain direction. Bai Yufeng turned his head and looked in that direction, and found a young man standing at the door of that elegant room, holding a long sword in his hand and looking wary. He looked up and down and found that this person's cultivation level was not low, at the 4th level of Yuanhai Realm, but, so what? Their blood-clothed sect is one of the 10 major forces of the Guyu dynasty, and their cultivation levels are all in the Yuanhai Realm. In Guyun City, there is the branch of Shui sect. Bai Yufeng didn't expect that someone else would rob the private room in his own territory. This was a naked slap in the face of Shui men. A surge of anger arose. Bai Yufeng's face was gloomy and he strode over. At this time, Lord Grimm also saw this group of people, curled his lips, and a cruel smile appeared on his young face. The person who came turned out to be a disciple of the famous blood-clothed sect. You dare to steal the private room? Bai Yufeng walked 3 meters closer, touched the hilt of the sword, and looked at Lord Grimm coldly. First come, first served, why grab one? Lord Grimm lowered his eyelids and remained calm. If you dare to rob my blood-clothed door, kill him. Several disciples from the blood-clothed sect nearby shouted angrily. Everyone drew their swords, shouted, and rushed towards Lord Grimm. Junior brother, let me help you. Luo Li suddenly rushed out with a sword, and Jun Mo Xiao was on the left and right, controlling the sword light, and fought hard. 2 people versus 7, in an instant, the 2 sides were fighting together. Lord Grimm was facing Bai Yufeng, who was on the 6th level of Yuanhai Realm. Luo Li fought against the 6 blood-clothed sect disciples from the Yuanhai Realm alone, whizzing. Sword rays flew out one after another, accompanied by screams one after another. The disciples of the blood-clothed sect were hit by swords one after another, bleeding profusely, and they were no match at all. On the entire 3rd floor, most of the tables, chairs, and rooms were damaged due to the surging sword energy. The loss to this wine shop was heavy. Who are you? Covering the bloody hole on his shoulder with his hand, Bai Yufeng looked at the young man and woman in shock. These 2 people are not very advanced, but their swordsmanship is superb. The combat power is so high that it is unimaginable. At first glance, he looked like an outstanding disciple cultivated by a large sect. Leave the sword and the storage ring and you can leave. Otherwise, you don't have to leave. Do you understand? Luo Li put the Taishang divine dragon sword to her mouth and blew gently. A mocking smile appeared on her beautiful little face. Chapter 27 The Teachings of Our Ancestors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dream. Bai Yufeng's face twisted, he gritted his teeth and said fiercely, you want us to keep the sword and storage ring? How is that possible? Let's go. As he said that, he turned around and wanted to take people out of the wine shop. You ungrateful animal. Luo Li's beautiful little face turned pale with anger. It was the first time she was called a villain and she said some cruel words, but it had no deterrent effect, which really made her extremely annoyed. Sister, we must not let them go. Lord Grimm shouted and chased after Bai Yufeng and others. Luo Li's face turned stern, and she followed suit. TSK. The sword light surged forward like a tidal wave. These blood-clothed sect disciples had a few more blood holes on their bodies, and the injuries were getting worse, and they completely lost their ability to fight. Lord Grimm forcibly took away the storage rings and the swords from several people. You can go. Luo Li frowned. The entire 3rd floor was covered in blood. This wine shop is only opened by an ordinary person, and it is not easy to start a small business. Besides, the ancestors are still dining, so it would not be good if they kill people. So Luo Li stopped his murderous intention. Bai Yufeng was hit by 7 or 8 swords, and his face became increasingly pale, but his eyes were still filled with arrogant madness. You, wait for me. He said harsh words and led his junior brothers to leave the wine shop quickly. Just wait, let me see what tricks you can do. Lord Grimm put away his sword and sneered disdainfully. After returning to the private room, seeing Yi Yun staring at him and smiling lightly, Luo Li looked ashamed and said, Ancestor, there was too much noise outside just now. Did it disturb your meal? Yi Yun put down the chopsticks in his hand, with a calm expression on his face, and spoke slowly. Is there a branch of the blood-clothed sect in this place? Should be. Luo Li thought for a while and nodded quickly. she remembered that Guyan City did fall within the sphere of influence of the Shui sect, and there was a branch of the Shui sect here. What was the last thing he said to you? Yi Yun smiled softly and asked gently. He told me to wait. Luo Li puffed up her chest and said proudly, I'm not afraid. What if they call a group of people again? Luo Li. Yi Yun raised his head, his eyes were soft, and he said calmly, time waits for me, and you don't have to wait any longer. Just go to the helm of the Blood Clothes Gate. What are you waiting for? It's a waste of time. Luo Li blinked, and a bright light flashed in her mind. I was wrong. Luo Li looked ashamed and nodded heavily, Ancestor, you are right, time has not waited for me, so what are you waiting for? Once you have made a grudge, just kill him. Children can be taught. Yi Yun chuckled and picked up the chopsticks again, in his heart, he will destroy anyone who offends him, no matter who the other party is, even if it was the way of heaven that angered him, it would still break into pieces. After receiving the approval of their ancestors, Luo Li and Jun Mo Xiao went downstairs. Just arrived at the door, a warm voice came to the ears of the two people. Go there in a carriage. Well done, ancestor. Luo Li suddenly chuckled, it seems, the ancestors still arranged backup for them. This black carriage is an incredible artifact, and the black horse has a mysterious origin and is extremely terrifying. So far, Luo Li still doesn't know what terrifying level of cultivation this dark horse has achieved. Even a strong man in the God-shaping realm is probably no match for dark horse. Luo Li and Jun Mo Xiao got on the carriage and hurried to the helm of the Blood Clothes Gate. Not long after, she saw several familiar figures. A black carriage sped past them and suddenly stopped. A beautiful little face turned from the side of the carriage. When Bai Yufeng saw Luo Li, he was shocked. He asked loudly, I gave you the sword and storage ring, why don't you give up? You don't need to call anyone, we'll go directly to your Bloody Clothes Gate to split the helm. Luo Li raised her eyebrows and sneered, da. The sound of horse hooves sounded, the black carriage suddenly sped away and disappeared from everyone's sight. Senior brother Bai, these two guys really dare to share the helm? A boy next to him asked. Although these two stupid guys are a bit strong, our blood-clothed sect is at the helm, and there are elders from the God-shaping realm sitting in charge. Bai Yufeng gritted his teeth and said bitterly, he wished that the two of them would share the helm at the Bloody Clothes Gate and die. Ha ha. The disciples next to him laughed, and their laughter affected his injuries, causing them to bleed. The branch of the Blood Clothes Sect is located in the northern district of Guyan City. The previous wine shop was in the south district. Riding in the black carriage, Luo Li and Jun Grim quickly arrived at the Bloody Clothes Gate. Who is it? Stop! When they saw an unidentified black carriage speeding towards them, two Xiandan Realm gatekeeper disciples from the Blood Clothes Sect immediately blocked the door. Get away! Luo Li swung his sword and released two sword energy. The two Xiandan Realm disciples fell to the ground after being struck by swords. Boom! The black carriage directly smashed through the gate of the Shui Gate and rushed in. Seeing how fierce the dark horse was, Lord Grimm suddenly became extremely excited, with a smile on his face, but his body was trembling slightly. Senior sister, why am I so excited? Because you are not a bad person. Luo Li raised her sword and replied with a giggle. Lord Grimm looked at the surging crowd and said with a self-deprecating smile, maybe it's because we were weak before and were used to being bullied. This time, we can finally feel proud and proud. Luo Li smiled and said, we are not bloodthirsty. If these people are sensible and obediently offer their weapons and storage rings, we can spare their lives. If they have thoughts of killing, don't show mercy. Kill them with one sword. Good. Lord Grimm nodded in agreement. Junior brother. Luo Li looked in a certain direction and said with admiration, the ancestors blew out a breath of fresh air, and everyone in Wangue Ridge was reduced to ashes. We must also have this kind of courage. Sister, you are right. A look of understanding appeared on Jun Mo's face. The heart of a sword becomes more and more transparent. After the black carriage drove into the square, many disciples of the Blood Clothes Sect rushed out from all around. Everyone stared at the black carriage with shocked expressions. My heart was filled with rage. These two Yuanhai Realm young men are really too arrogant, aren't they? He actually drove a carriage and broke down the gate of their bloody clothes gate. This is a serious provocation. Who are you? A skinny old man in blood-clothed clothes walked out of the crowd and stared at the two people with a stern face. You don't deserve to know. Luo Li's eyes were as frosty as she was determined. She stared at the elder at the first level of the God-shaping realm and said calmly, the blood-clothed sect disciples are arrogant and domineering and deserve to be severely punished. You should quickly put down your weapons, hand over the storage rings, and run for your lives. After listening to Luo Li's words, the elder of the blood-clothed sect who was in the realm of God-shaping was so angry that he was shaking all over. An old, yellow face suddenly turned as white as frost. Chapter 28 Breakthrough in Battle, Second Level of Yuanhai Realm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. All Yuanhai Realm disciples of the blood-clothed sect, obey the order. Quickly kill the two provocateurs. The first one who sees blood on his sword will be rewarded with a bottle of heaven-level Yuan Pei Dan. That the elder of the blood-clothed sect looked ruthless and issued an order to kill them. I heard that the heaven-level Pei Yuan pill will be rewarded. The Yuanhai Realm disciple of the blood-clothed sect let out an ouch and became energetic. He stared with blood-red eyes like a beast and swung his sword to kill. Senior sister, it's our chance to sharpen our swords. Looking at the blood-clothed sect disciples swarming from all sides, Lord Grimm was not afraid at all. Instead, he was excited and his blood was boiling. There are 40 or 50 monks in the surrounding Yuanhai realm. Such a large number of enemies will bring huge pressure to them. Between life and death, cultivation and combat experience can lead to rapid breakthroughs. Although there are many blood-clothed sect disciples around, but there is no one with the 6th level of Yuanhai realm like Bai Yufeng. Most of them are between the 1st and 5th levels of Yuanhai realm. Junior brother, I just took a dragon tiger pill and I'm feeling uncomfortable. Let's go and kill someone with senior sister. Luoli laughed and jumped up, a sword light roared in all directions. Lord Grimm also performed the 9 transformations of the divine dragon, turning into several phantoms. He was in the air and launched the divine dragon sword technique. The sword light was like mercury pouring down the ground, attacking in all directions. The attainments of these two people in swordsmanship are slightly inferior to those of Shenlong 9 transformations, therefore, even if there are 40 or 50 Yuanhai realm monks attacking them, the 2 human body techniques are flexible and superb, and they can survive the tide of attacks with ease. TSK. Sword light shot out from all directions, shadows crisscrossed the square, and none of the attacks could fall on the 2 of them. Although he escaped wave after wave of attacks, it is not easy for 2 people to attack each other. After all, for every attack, more than a dozen people from the other side counterattacked at the same time. Bang bang, the sword energy of both sides collided in the air, and finally the explosion disappeared. The fighting was extremely fierce. The blood-clothed elder of the God-shaping realm stared at the battle with a stern face, his hands behind his back, and he was extremely confused in his heart. Although these 2 young men and women are not highly cultivated, but the real combat power is no small matter. What kind of force can cultivate such talents? The other 10 major sects seem to have never heard of these 2 people. The elder's eyes moved and he suddenly saw several bloody men running in. Why are you so seriously injured? Elder Lu looked at Bai Yufeng with a shocked expression, and his heart jumped suddenly. Bai Yufeng is one of the top 10 talented disciples of the sect. Although he ranks low, it is not a small matter to suffer such a serious injury. Just when Elder Lu was deep in thought, Bai Yufeng stared closely at the battle scene. He was shocked to find that the young man and woman not only came to break into the blood-clothed sect to share the helm, but also started fighting with his junior brothers. These 2 guys had great movement skills. They were like swimming dragons, dodging and moving. Their swords were shining like rain, but they couldn't touch them. Even if there are many people besieging them, there is nothing they can do for a while. What kind of movement is this? Bai Yufeng looked shocked. As a disciple of Tianjiao, he is extremely knowledgeable, but he has never seen such a superb movement technique. Elder Lu, we were injured by them, and our sword and storage ring were also taken away. You must help us take revenge. A disciple of the blood-clothed sect cried to Elder Lu with a look of grief on his face. Don't worry, they can't escape. Elder Lu nodded gloomily. he caused trouble in his blood-clothed sect branch and not only injured the sect disciples, but also took away the sword and storage ring. How could he let the other party escape? Once he escapes, he, the blood-clothed sect elder, won't be able to do anything else. In the private room of the wine shop, Yi Yun took a bite of the food slowly, looked in a certain direction, and nodded lightly. On the way, Luo Li and Jun Mo Xiao both took a dragon tiger pill. The medicinal power has not been completely dispersed, and most of it is stored in the body. Now there were 40 or 50 blood-clothed sect disciples from the Yuanhai Realm attacking, which put a huge pressure on the two of them. Maybe, two people can take the opportunity to break through, even if Yi Yun's seal is suppressed to the Yuanhai Realm. If it is raised by a small level, it is equivalent to being raised by a level in the God-shaping realm. Therefore, it does not affect the true cultivation of Luo Li and Lord Grimm. Yi Yun hopes that the two of them can reach a higher level without external help. In this way, in the future, with the magic weapon and sharp blade, I can fight with more powerful people who have surpassed the level. Aha! After Jun Mo Xiao repelled several disciples with one sword, he transformed into a divine dragon shadow and disappeared into the void. Suddenly, he heard a slight sound coming from his ears. A phantom fell in mid-air, turned into reality, and fell out of mid-air. Lord Grimm felt that his senior sister's cultivation had reached the second level of Yuanhai Realm. Senior sister actually made a breakthrough. Lord Grimm was overjoyed. At this time, the sword light of more than a dozen blood-clothed sect disciples attacked like mercury. He rushed over and blocked the wave of sword light. After Luo Li broke through, her combat power sword, and she suddenly swung countless sword lights. This guy actually broke through during the battle. Bai Yufeng gritted his teeth and wished he could rush forward and join the battle. Those who can break through in battle are all peerless monsters. Elder Lu, you can't stand idly by any longer. Otherwise, maybe that kid will break through soon. Bai Yufeng said bitterly. Elder Lu's face was gloomy, and he also felt that the situation was serious. He drew out his sword and prepared to join the battle and quickly fight to kill the two Yuanhai Realm provocateurs. Sudden, from the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of a black carriage on one side of the square. Again and again, the black horse stepped lightly on the ground with its hooves, making a crisp sound. This sound was like thunder exploding in his ears, and Elder Lu was stunned on the spot. The black horse raised his head and took a quick look. At this moment, Elder Lu seemed to be trapped in endless darkness. In the darkness, two huge blood-red eyes as big as hills suddenly appeared, staring at him faintly. He was extremely small at the moment. Looking up in the darkness, he saw a terrifying demon king towering over the sky, looking down at him from the 9 heavens. Elder Lu was sweating profusely, and his whole body seemed to be frozen. He was frozen on the spot, not daring to move at all. Bai Yufeng felt strange. Elder Lu, wasn't he going to kill those two guys? Why are you suddenly sweating profusely and afraid to take action? Elder Lu, what's wrong with you? Bai Yufeng asked quietly from the side. Elder Lu said nothing, with a dull expression on his face. Still immersed in that dark and terrifying world, Bai Yufeng discovered that something was strange. He looked around but found nothing. He felt something was not good in his heart and shouted loudly to the disciples in the Xiandan realm. Everyone join the attack and kill the incoming enemies. Yes. Hundreds of Xiandan realm blood-clothed sect disciples shouted in unison. The sound was roaring with endless murderous intent. Pieces of sword light, from far to near, fell into the center. The pressure suddenly increased. Suddenly, the battle situation in the square changed rapidly. Chapter 29 Lord Grimm breaks through. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Although, the disciples of the Xiandan realm of the blood-clothed sect are not very strong, but there is strength in numbers, more than 200 people. The continuous long-range attacks of sword light from the outside also put more pressure on Luo Li and Lord Grimm. The little advantage Luo Li had just broken through was now gone. The two of them could only rely on the unpredictable 9 transformations of the divine dragon to deal with each other. After all, they grew up and practiced together since childhood, and Luo Li and Lord Grimm's fighting coordination was extremely tacit. The two of them unexpectedly avoided the attack at the same time, and then used their wits to sneak attack on the Xiandan realm disciples on the periphery. At first 2 people succeeded, killed dozens of Xiandan realm disciples, but soon, the bloody clothes sect adjusted its strategy. The Yuanhai Realm disciples were combined into several groups of sword formations, and their coordination was extremely skillful, blocking all the attacks of the two people. In the private room of the wine shop, Yi Yun took a piece of braised pork and put it into his mouth, chewing it slowly, watching the battle with a faint smile on his face. Suppressing their realms, treasures, and robes really helped their practice tremendously. Luo Li was the first to break through. Looking at Lord Grimm like this, it seems that a breakthrough is not far away. After all, the two of them had just eaten a god level Dragon Tiger Pill. This kind of elixir is a supreme cultivation product. There has never been a Dragon Tiger Pill of this level in the entire Changnan continent. The ordinary Dragon and Tiger Pill can only be seen in sects above the heaven level. On the Changnan continent, sect power is divided into 5 levels: ordinary, large sect, super, heavenly level, and eternal level. These 10 major forces like the Guyu dynasty are just ordinary sects. None can be called a large sect. The top eternal level sect in the entire Changnan continent. 100,000 years ago, there were only 3. It can be seen how powerful the eternal level sect is. It is simply the giant level sect on the Changnan continent. If any disciple walks out, he will be a destructive being. However, the current eternal level sect should be located in the center of Changnan continent, which has the most abundant spiritual energy. Distance from Guyu dynasty, I don't know how many billions of miles there are. In the eyes of Yi Yun, a big boss who once served as the head of an eternal level sect, the so-called top 10 forces of the Guyu dynasty in front of him are nothing more than a few ants. Moreover, Yi Yun is now in the realm of true gods. All living beings are like ants in his eyes. He has no mercy. If you are in the long river of time, you will find that life is continuous growth one after another. Even if you kill one crop, another crop will grow out soon. Therefore, Yi Yun, the invincible true God, kills people without any emotional fluctuations. It's like crushing a few ants. The life level of the true God is not something ordinary monks can guess. Square. The battle at this moment was extremely thrilling, for Lord Grimm and Luo Li, relying on their strong bodies, they are struggling to support themselves. Suddenly there was a bang sound. Lord Grimm's body shook slightly, and he suddenly fell from the void. This moment, he actually successfully broke through from the 4th level to the 5th level of Yuanhai Realm. Seeing this situation, Luo Li rushed over and swung a sword light to help Lord Grimm block a wave of attacks. Huh, little junior brother, congratulations, you have also made a breakthrough. Yes, senior sister. After the breakthrough, Lord Grimm's aura became even more powerful. He waved his sword and counterattacked around him. Although he has only broken through 1 level, don't forget that his original cultivation level has already reached the realm of shaping the gods. Now that the suppressed cultivation level has been broken through, the increase in combat power brought by this kind of breakthrough is greater than that of conventional breakthroughs. At this time, Lord Grimm immediately changed from passive to active. No need to be so embarrassed. When Bai Yufeng saw this, he couldn't help but stamp his feet in anger. Who are these young men and women? Actually achieved consecutive breakthroughs in the battle. Elder Lu, why don't you take action? Bai Yufeng looked at Elder Lu who was sweating next to him and pushed him angrily. How long has it been? And he is still in a daze. Oh. Elder Lu sighed softly, as if waking up from a dream. He was sweating profusely and kept wiping his sweat. Looking at the terrifying black horse in the distance, his body was still trembling. Elder Lu, what's wrong with you? Bai Yufeng's face darkened and he asked with great dissatisfaction. Elder Lu was speechless. He wanted to join the fight, but he was afraid of that terrifying dark horse. If he did not participate in the battle, he might not be able to escape the sect's punishment. Either way it's death. Elder Lu gritted his teeth, drew his sword and rushed towards Luo Li. Again and again. There was a crisp sound of horse hooves. Elder Lu, who was in mid-air, suddenly heard a loud thunder-like sound, which made his head buzz. He passed out in an instant, fell to the ground. Damn it, this Elder Lu is pretending to be dead. Bai Yufeng was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Out of fear, he grabbed a sword and stabbed Elder Lu fiercely. The sword hit his chest, his heart burst, and the unconscious Elder Lu died. Senior brother Bai, why did you kill Elder Lu? An injured junior brother next to him asked in a trembling voice. What's the use of having an elder like this when you retreat in the face of battle? I'm here to clean up the sect. After killing someone, his courage became stronger and stronger. Bai Yufeng said fiercely, the other disciples were as silent as a cicada, not daring to breathe. However, they did see it. Elder Lu of the God-shaping realm, who was at the helm of the blood-clothed sect, really did not work hard, which resulted in huge casualties at the helm of the blood-clothed sect. So Brother Bai suddenly took action to kill Elder Lu this time, and no one had any objections. "Junior brothers, we must fight to the death to kill these two guys." Bai Yufeng raised his sword with one hand and roared angrily, "Today, this battle can no longer end well. If these two guys are not killed, all of them will die." After hearing Bai Yufeng's words, the disciples of the blood-clothed sect perked up and used all their strength to besiege Luo Li and Jun Mo Xiao crazily. The two of them did not lose their position. They stayed calm and dodged attacks while counterattacking, but they did not lose too much. An hour later, most of the disciples of the blood-clothed sect were pale and sweating all over their bodies. They were somewhat exhausted in terms of physical strength and magic power, but at this moment, Luo Li and Jun Mo Xiao were still as powerful as a tiger. "Sister, they are dying." Lord Grimm laughed loudly, and his sword skills became even more powerful. A piece of sword light fell. Immediately, 3 Yuanhai Realm blood-clothed sect disciples were hit by swords, screamed in agony, and fell back. "Kill!" Luo Li also began to launch a fierce counterattack. In an instant, the disciples of the blood-clothed sect were defeated one after another. Many people were seriously injured, with blood pouring from their bodies. At this time, the eyes of the blood-clothed sect disciples showed extremely frightened expressions. The battle lasted for almost 2 hours. This young man and woman didn't even show any signs of fatigue. What the hell, are they still human? Chapter 30. The Saint falls in love with Jun Mo Xiao. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yi Yun tapped the table gently with his hand. His face was calm, but a smile appeared deep in his eyes. This is where the Shenlong Sect monks are powerful, possessing the bloodline of a divine dragon. His physique is different from that of ordinary people, and his combat power is extremely astonishing and long-lasting. 100,000 years ago, faced with the pursuit of more than 20 Eternal Realm experts, Yi Yun became more and more courageous as he fought, killing half of them and scaring away the other half. Luo Li and Jun Mo Xiao both have the blood of the ancestral dragon. Although thin, it is far superior to its peers, so a battle of this level is nothing to them, the longer you hold on. Instead, the two people changed from a disadvantageous situation to a favorable situation. Yi Yun suddenly raised his head, his eyes piercing through eternity. A silver-white Dharma boat flew out from the clouds and stopped in the sky above Guiyun City. On top of this silver Dharma boat, a group of girls wearing brightly colored short skirts are standing there. Each of these girls is beautiful and exudes an evil aura. Interesting. Yi Yun smiled lightly. Suddenly another force appeared. Is this just for these two little guys to continue sharpening their swords? It seems that Luo Li and Lord Grimm can still break through. Yi Yun is full of expectations. In the blood-clothed gate subrudder, the battle is still going on. Luo Li and Lord Grimm showed off their might and beat each other until they howled like ghosts. On top of the silver Dharma boat, among the girls was a beautiful and scantily clad woman. She is at the 9th level of Yuanhai Realm. At this moment, she was standing on the edge of the Dharma arc, looking down, with a hint of shock on her pretty face. "Miss, someone has chosen the helm of the bloody clothes sect." An old woman next to her sighed and said, "This old grandma has a very high level of cultivation, reaching the 2nd level of the God-shaping realm." The blood-clothed sect and the Hehuan sect have always been on good terms with each other. When things like this happen, we shouldn't just sit idly by. The sexy girl licked her lips. With an evil look in her eyes, she stared closely at the heroic and handsome young man on the battlefield. With pink mist in her eyes, she fell in love with the boy at first sight. The young man exudes an unimaginable masculine aura, is extremely handsome and unforgettable. Their Hehuan sect was also one of the 10 major forces in the Guyu dynasty. Zhou Menjing is a saint of Hehuan sect. This trip was also to find a furnace for cultivation, but after several months of searching, none satisfied her. Unexpectedly, when she passed by Guiyun City and saw this extraordinary young man, Zhou Menjing was immediately moved. The old mama's eyes flashed and she noticed something strange in the young lady's eyes. She knew it. With a slight raise of his hand, the silver boat landed quickly. A shadow came. "The Hehuan sect is here." Bai Yufeng looked up and saw the familiar logo of the Dharma boat, and his face suddenly lit up with joy. the Huan Sect and the Blood Clothes Sect have a very good relationship. There have been several alliances in history, but this time, the Huan Sect suddenly arrived, seemingly ready to help the Blood Clothes Sect survive this disaster. I've seen the saint. Looking at the sexy girl who slowly walked down from the silver boat, Bai Yufeng had a serious look on his face and bowed with great respect. This is the saint of Huan Sect. His status is second only to the head of the Huan Sect. Moreover, the saint's cultivation level is at the 9th level of Yuanhai Realm, far above him. Senior brother Bai, what happened here? Zhou Menjing pretended to be surprised. Two guys came from nowhere and made a big fuss about our blood-clothed sect's division. They also asked the saint to help out for the sake of the good relationship between the two sections. Bai Yufeng cupped his hands and clasped his fists with a look of pleading on his face. Zhou Menjing nodded lightly and smiled. Don't worry, you and I are family friends. This time the Blood Clothes Sect is in trouble. Of course we, the Huan Sect, can't just sit idly by. She gently raised her jade hand, made a gesture in mid-air, and immediately rushed out 20 or 30 disciples of the Huan Sect in Yuanhai Realm. The men were captured alive and the women were killed. The old woman next to her gave instructions in a deep voice. Hearing what the old woman said, a blush suddenly flashed across Zhou Menjing's pretty little face. This old grandma who has watched her grow up understands her thoughts very well, knowing that she fell in love with that handsome boy, standing in the square now, even from a distance of tens of meters. Zhou Menjing could actually feel the vast masculine aura emanating from the young man. This kind of breath rolled in, as if like an ancient dragon, wrapping her up, making her whole body feel hot and limp, and she wanted to get into the boy's arms. Luo Li is an elf. As soon as I heard the name of Huan Sect, I immediately felt something bad in my heart. She had heard of the name of the saint Zhou Menjing of the Huan Sect. It is said that this saint has been looking for a suitable furnace. Every year I take some time to travel around and look for things. Junior brother, I never expected that someone would take notice of you. Luo Li swung his sword and turned into a shadow, passing by Lord Grimm, and said with a smile. Lord Grimm blushed. He didn't expect that the saint of Huan Sect would target him. Naturally, he has admired the name of Huan Sect for a long time. But how could he like this kind of woman? Taking a deep breath, Lord Grimm looked murderous and said, Sister, don't worry, if she dares to be disrespectful to me, I will kill her immediately. Junior brother, that's well said. Luo Li laughed and entered the battle again. After the Yuanhai Realm disciples of the Huan Sect joined the battle, the pressure on the two of them became even greater. The old grandma scanned the surroundings warily. Suddenly, I found a black carriage and a black horse, standing unexpectedly in a corner. She sent out her spiritual consciousness to sense it, and found that it was just an ordinary carriage and black horse, so she stopped paying attention to it. At this time, she looked elsewhere. He saw Elder Lu lying on the ground in a pool of blood. Why did Elder Lu, the God-shaping realm of your blood-clothed sect, die? That the old grandma looked at Bai Yufeng and asked. Bai Yufeng braced himself and explained, Mommy, Elder Lu is facing a formidable enemy. He is so timid that he pretends to be dead. I am cleaning up the door for the sect. Pretending to be dead, that the old grandma was stunned for a moment, and she and Zhou Menjing looked at each other, with shock in each other's eyes. Does a dignified monk in the God-shaping realm need to pretend to be dead to avoid danger when faced with two teenagers in the Yuanhai realm? The two people felt that this matter was extremely strange. Zhou Menjing stared intently at the handsome young man who exuded a masculine aura. Elder Lu's matter was quickly forgotten. Her starry eyes were blurred and her face was like a peach blossom. Why is this boy so masculine? Think of this. Zhou Menjing's legs tightened. Her sexy and delicate body became increasingly difficult to control herself.